in the history of fandom. There have been many adaptations of Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but there's only one that strikes hard and fades into the night. Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and our story begins in the totally radical era known as the 80s. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird went into business for themselves and produced their own comic out of Laird's living room via the appropriately named Mirage Studios. That comic was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was supposed to be a parody of the New Mutants, Daredevil, and other comics of the era. But what nobody could have predicted is that it would go on to become the most successful independent comic of all time. A success that would increase exponentially when it was adapted into a toy line in an animated series in 1987. The killer combination of Playmate's Ninja Turtles toy line and the animated series by Fred Wolf Entertainment turned Ninja Turtles into a pop culture phenomenon that would pave the way for movies, video games, and even more TV shows. But strangely enough, none of the TV shows based on Ninja Turtles throughout the 80s and 90s were faithful to the source material. This all changed in the 2000s, when Eastman and Laird's Mirage Studios teamed with 4Kids Entertainment to produce an animated show that was more faithful to comics. Originally, this iteration of Ninja Turtles was going to be more lighthearted and more in line with the parody aspect of the comic, and was initially pitched to Warner Brothers for either their Kids WB lineup or Cartoon Network. And they passed. I'm going to repeat that just in case you missed it. Warner Brothers passed on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. 20th Century Fox would not be that foolish, as they were looking for content for the new Foxbox lineup. However, their network was more interested in the darker, more mature tone of the comic, and its potential to be the Fox Network's equivalent to the massively successful DC animated universe. And thus, the original lighthearted tone from the original pitch was dropped, and the show became what we know and love.
Show me the money, baby! Woohoo! This isn't Finders Keepers, Mikey.
The plot. Really? Okay. For the sake of those of you who should seriously be returning your geek cards, Splinter was the humble pet rat of martial arts master Hamato Yoshi, until his master was attacked and slain by his rival, Oroku Saki, aka the Shredder. Without his master, Splinter had no choice but to survive alone in the sewers of New York City, secluded and directionless, until he found purpose when 4 baby turtles were accidentally dropped into the sewers, who Splinter took on as his own children, until the day they were all exposed to a mysterious ooze that mutated them into anthropomorphic animals. Knowing that the world above would never accept them, Splinter imparted his 4 surrogate sons with the ninjutsu skills that he learned from his master. Originally so the turtles could defend themselves and successfully hide from the humans who would fear and hate them. But eventually, the 4 turtles employed these skills towards a higher purpose, to fight crime and even save the world as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Character design and animation. The animation was handled by Dogwoo Animation, with the specific mandate that the show would feature intense action sequences, on par with shows like Batman the Animated Series and X-Men, and that the Turtles would display actual martial arts prowess, which was something that was sorely lacking from previous adaptations. I have to say that this mandate was most definitely achieved, as this show has some of the best action sequences out of the entire franchise. Yes, even better than the movies. The characters were designed by Joe Boyle, who somehow created the perfect amalgam of the Turtles' look from the first movie and their original designs from the comic, which makes sense as Ninja Turtles co-creator Peter Laird was one of the executive producers.
Did you see that? Some little green men in an armored car just threw a bunch of money at us. Rookie.
Cast and characters. Look, this show ran for 7 seasons, 155 episodes, and a movie. It has lots and lots of characters. So in this section, I'm only going to talk about the ones that were prominent throughout those 7 seasons and that movie, and I will talk about the rest when they become relevant as I discuss the seasons individually. okay? But before that, fun fact, Susan Blue, the voice director for the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, was also the voice director for this show, which is really impressive as the tone between both shows is so dramatically different and a clear display as Susan's versatility as a director. The villains. So many villains, so little time. Let's begin with the most faithful henchman in the history of henching, Hun, played by Greg Carey. Hun starts out as the leader of the Purple Dragon Gang, who eventually levels up and becomes the Shredder's right-hand man. Throughout the first half of the series, he has an ongoing feud with Casey Jones, as he and the Purple Dragons burn down Casey's father's shop, presumably killing Casey's father in the process. And these two clash almost as often as the Turtles clash with Shredder.
You're done, Hun!
Baxter Stockman, played by Scott A. Williams. The arrogant mad scientist who is best known for creating the Mousers. Baxter starts out as April O'Neil's crooked boss, who turns out to be secretly under the employ of the Shredder. Baxter is the Judas, the Starscream of the show. The scheming weasel who's only in it for himself, and will betray his own boss at the drop of a hat.
If I can't find any evidence, then I'll just have to make some evidence.
One of my favorite running gags in the show is how every time Baxter fails the Shredder, the villain amputates part of Baxter's anatomy. Throughout the course of the series, Baxter is dismantled bit by bit, until he's just a brain, a spine, and an eyeball in a jar.
You should have quit while you were ahead.
Go ahead and laugh, Shredder.
Yes, I know it's harsh and a little bit ridiculous, but it's the kind of goofy sci-fi horror nonsense that I absolutely love. Oroku Saki, the Shredder, played by Scott Ryo. One of the most legendary villains of all time, the all-powerful and seemingly indestructible archenemy of the Ninja Turtles. My favorite change made to the character in this series is how they gave him a dual life. On the surface, Oroku Saki appears to be a benevolent billionaire philanthropist who is above the law, someone who's far beyond the Turtles' retribution or any kind of accountability. In reality, Saki is actually the Shredder, the leader of the Foot Clan, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. So no matter which of his personas the Turtles face, he still remains their most formidable foe. And on the subject of foes, the heroes. When establishing the characterization for the portrayal of the main characters in this show, the main rule that was established is that it would be based on the first Ninja Turtles movie. And as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the greatest pieces of voice direction ever given. Casey Jones, played by Mark Thompson. Quick side note, Mark was the utility player for this show and played over 50 characters throughout the course of the series. And that's amazing. But his primary role was that of the sporting good-wielding street vigilante, Casey Jones. A victim of gang violence, Casey inevitably decides to take matters into his own hands and deliver his own brand of street justice. Originally, Casey intends to be the judge, jury, and executioner in his crusade. Thankfully, after a chance run-in with Raphael, Casey learns that there's a better way, and that you can still defeat the bad guys without having to act like them. April O'Neil, played by Veronica Taylor. Yes, Ash Ketchum is also April O'Neil. God, I love voiceover. So let's get a few things straight. Number one, April O'Neil is not a reporter.
How do I look?
Great. If you're removing toxic waste.
You're no help.
That is a concept introduced in the 1987 show to facilitate the exposition. April, in actuality, is a brilliant scientist. In this show, a computer programmer. She is a genius, and while she might not have a knack for invention, like Donatello, she is smart enough to sustain an intelligent conversation with the resident brainiac, operate his inventions, or even assist him if needed. And number two, while April starts out as a damsel in distress, she sure as hell doesn't remain as one. And I mean no disrespect to any versions of April O'Neil that came before and after this one, but this one has the best character arc out of any version of the character. And that is not a boast, it is a fact. April starts out as the assistant to Baxter Stockman during the Mauser Project, but when she discovers the bad doctor's sinister plans, Stockman tries to dispose of her. Thankfully, she is rescued by the Ninja Turtles, and the experience leaves her with such a lasting impression that she starts training in martial arts. And she doesn't just become a badass from one season to the other. Her transformation takes years, but eventually she gets to stand shoulder to shoulder with the boys in green. There's a bit more to April's arc, but I'm gonna save that for later. Hamato Splinter, played by Darren Dunsman. In some versions, Hamato Yoshi and Splinter are the same person, but here, like in the comics, they are separate beings. As I stated before, Splinter starts out as Yoshi's pet, and doesn't just learn martial arts from his master, but also a sense of justice, kindness, and wrong from right. Splinter is the Turtles' adopted father, a role he takes even more seriously than being their sensei. And honestly, our heroes couldn't have asked for a better parent.
Master Splinter, you kick butt!
Oh, and I love the running gag how Splinter is the biggest badass on the show, but he is horrible with technology.
Donatello, here. I will fight. You will drive.
Michelangelo, played by Wayne Grayson, the nunchuck-twirling immature fanboy of the bunch. Mikey is easily distracted by video games, comics, movies, and food, but he is unquestionably faithful to his family, and the most natural athlete in the bunch. My favorite recurring plotline with Mikey is his desire to become a superhero and join the popular crime-fighting team, the Justice Force, even though he is already part of an awesome team, who by all accounts have saved the world more than the Justice Force. But alas, let the dreamer dream.
Turtle Titan, who, disguised as Michelangelo, mild-mannered Ninja Turtle, fought a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the Terrapin Way. Ah!
Donatello, played by Sam Riegel, the bow staff wielding brainiac and conscience of the team. Without this turtle, our heroes would be lost, as not only does he build all of their vehicles and weapons, but he is more often than not the voice of reason among his chaotic brothers. You can always count on the sweet and sensitive Donnie to keep a level head.
Donnie, you may be a pain in the shell, but I'm proud that you're my bro.
Raphael, played by Gregory Abbey, the damage-dealing hothead with the dual side, the warrior, the backbone of the team. Raph loves to fight and is not afraid to let you know it. His hobbies include wrestling, motorcycles, and punching bad guys. 3 things that he shares in common with his best friend, Casey Jones.
Piece of cake! Don't be so sure.
While he may have the toughest time controlling his temper, it's always a plus to aim his rage at the villains when our heroes are in battle.
1 o'clock!
Leonardo, played by Michael Sinker-Nicholas, the sword-slinging, cool and collected commander, always deferring to Bushido as his philosophy in life and style of leadership. Leo may appear centered on the outside, but the weight of leadership is painful and crushing, which is a burden that the Turtle in Blue happily accepts.
I have a few new surveillance toys I want to test. Wait up! It's tough being the leader.
Seasons 1 through 4, the Mirage Era.
While this show has a strong reputation for faithfully adapting the original comic published by Mirage Entertainment, that only pertains to the first 4 seasons. Now, don't misunderstand me. That's 104 episodes out of 155 that are dedicated mostly to adapting the comic. That's over 2/3 of the show. And believe me, after that, the producers of this show more than earned their right to add their own lore to the Ninja Turtles mythology.
Season 1.
The show premiered February 8th, 2003 on the Fox Network's Saturday morning block, The Fox Box, with Lloyd Goldfine as the series showrunner. As expected, the show was a massive hit, so much so that it became the animation block's flagship show. The show starts out exactly like the comics, with the Ninja Turtles fighting the Purple Dragon Gang on the streets of New York. However, in the comics, this is the only appearance of the Purple Dragon Gang, who are major antagonists throughout most of this series. The inaugural season flows beautifully, establishing the characters and lore of the franchise, as we see the turtles venture to the surface world for the first time and discover all the advanced and otherworldly crime that occurs in the shadows of their fair city. The turtles immediately start to intervene and put a stop to all these astonishingly powerful villains, including a mysterious band of ninja thieves called the Foot. Throughout their nightly adventures, our heroes meet April and Casey, and discover the architect of most of the perils that befall New York City, the Shredder. This season also includes my favorite standalone episode, The King, based on the Donatello one-shot from the comics, where Donnie meets Eastman and Lear's hero, the king of comics himself, Jack Kirby. And it might just be the fanboy in me talking, but I get choked up every time I watch this one.
Don, life at best is bittersweet. See you around, pal. Kirby.
And thus we arrive at the series' first big story arc, The Shredder Strikes. What I love about this series' approach to this storyline is that Saki actually tries to tempt Leonardo to join the Foot, and our fateful leader legitimately considers it. Now, we all know that Leo is too smart and too loyal to agree to join the Foot, but it is a solid first move from the Shredder. And then, just like in the comics, our heroes battle their arch foe on a rooftop and effectively defeat the Shredder. Or do they? Shredder strikes back with a vengeance as the Foot Ninja ambush and nearly kill Leonardo. And no, I have no idea why in the original movie they switched Leonardo and Raphael for this part of the story. Shredder and the Foot attack our heroes in April's apartment, destroying it as well as her father's pawn shop in the process. In spite of much needed assistance from Casey, our heroes have no choice but to retreat to Casey's family farmhouse in upstate New York. After taking some time to heal and prep, our heroes return to New York, where they take the battle straight to Shredder and his skyscraper, in an awesome Game of Death style assault that sees our heroes meet different deadly dangers on each floor as they make their way up to their arch nemesis, until they get to the rooftop where they have yet another epic clash with the Shredder. First of all, yes, that's accurate to the comic. Yes, that happened in the first season. And yes, that aired on a Saturday morning. So, the Shredder has been defeated. Or was he? While our heroes won the day, throughout the course of the battle, Splinter went missing. And thus, our season ends as the Turtles bow to find their father.
Season 2.
After weeks of searching, our heroes trace Splinter to the TCRI building. TCRI is what was written on the canister of ooze that transformed them from Pet Shop Turtles to Ninja Turtles. Our heroes investigate and discover that TCRI is run by a race of tiny squishy aliens called the Utrom. But before they can learn the true nature of the Utrom, or why they took Splinter, our heroes accidentally activate a transmat device, and are teleported a few hundred light years away. And thus, we begin the first big story arc of Season 2, Turtles in Space. As our heroes land in a distant galaxy, smack dab in the middle of a conflict between two warring factions, the Triceratons and the Federation. These two factions are fighting over one man, Professor Zayden Honeycutt, the Fugitoid, played by Oliver Wyman. The professor was a brilliant scientist who, via a horrible accident, had his brain uploaded into the body of a robot. All of that transpired while the professor was in the middle of creating his experimental teleportal, a device that would allow entire fleets of ships to be transported from one end of the universe to the other, which is great for trade and transportation, but the Triceratons and the Federation want to use it for war. And now that the professor is an android, he has no rights, so the two factions can pursue him, kidnap him, and force him to do whatever they want without repercussions, effectively making him a fugitive android. A Fugitoid. So of course the Turtles intervene, both because it's the right thing to do, and because the professor's technology could get them home. So of course they rescue the professor and get back to Earth, but if you thought the show was weird before, then buckle up, because this is when this show goes banana balls. The Turtles and the Professor arrive back at the TCRI building just in time to discover that the Utrom are not their enemies. In fact, the Utrom have been helping them all along. Why? Well, do you remember when the Turtles were mutated by that mysterious ooze? Ever wonder where the ooze came from? As it turns out, the mutagen is a toxic byproduct of the Utrom's transmat device, which they accidentally dropped in the sewers. And because the Turtles and Splinter's transformation was their fault, they have been keeping tabs on them for years, even occasionally assisting them in their adventures. Hence, the reason they took Splinter to give him medical care when he was injured during their last encounter with the Shredder. So why did they build a transmat device that would produce such dangerous toxic waste? Because the Utrom have been stuck on Earth since their ship crashed during the 11th century in feudal Japan, when their ship was sabotaged by a ruthless Utrom criminal called Shrell.
Big talk, little slime ball.
Big talk, little slime ball.
Hey!
So the Utrom had to wait for the Earth's technology to become advanced enough for them to build their transmat and get home. What? That's not weird enough for you? Just you wait. In the middle of the Turtles receiving their exposition via a Matrix-style simulation, Shredder, who somehow reattached his head, attacks. And of course, a battle ensues. And our heroes make the most shocking discovery of the entire series.
The Shredders? And Utrom?
That's right, the Shredder in this show is an Utrom. This was a revelation that was very divisive among the fandom, and there were even some fans that stopped watching the show because of it.
Oh, I don't know. He looks alright to me.
Personally, I was always okay with it, because it added to the Shredder's mystique, plus it explained why he was indestructible. Hell, I'll even admit right here and now that I prefer the Utrom Shredder to the human one. Plus, it gave the Shredder a stronger connection to the Turtles' origin, because if he hadn't crashed that ship, it wouldn't have set the series of events into motion that would create the Turtles, the very beings who would go on to defeat him one day, making him the creator of his own undoing. So the Shredder sets off a bomb in the TCRI building. Our heroes make it out okay thanks to the transmat, but old Squishy gets caught in the blast, and so the Shredder is defeated. Or is he?
Soon, I will be myself again.
So with Shredder absent and the Foot inactive, a power vacuum is created in the criminal underworld in New York City, as we arrive at the second big story arc of Season 2, City at War, where we see the Purple Dragons, the mob, and the remnants of the Foot at war with one another over control over New York City. And of course, the boys in green are caught smack dab in the middle of the conflict. It is during this story arc that the Turtles meet Shredder's replacement in the Foot, his adopted daughter, Karai, played by Karen Neal. Karai is a stern, deadly ninja who may possess her father's martial arts skills, but has a stronger sense of honor. Henceforth, the Turtles form an uneasy alliance with her throughout the conflict.
It may be a deal with the devil, but at least it's a devil we know.
Also, there seems to be this unrequited thing happening between Leonardo and Karai that a lot of fans are very much attached to.
Gotcha!
Fun fact, in the comics, Karai is not the Shredder's daughter. She's just the head of the Foot in Japan. The concept of her being the villain's adopted daughter was created for this show, which, in my humble opinion, is this series' greatest contribution to the mythology, which is evident in the fact that this change has been made permanent in every subsequent adaptation of the character. I feel that this is brilliant for two reasons. Number one, it creates a fascinating inner conflict for Karai, as she is often torn between doing what's right and honoring her father. And number two, it creates the perfect parallel between her and the Turtles, as it makes them all children that were born out of a feud, and it puts them in the role of the second generation having to bear the consequences of their father's actions.
You saved me? But why?
4 guys I care for very, very much seem to think there's something about you that's worth saving.
With Shredder out of commission and the Foot under new management, the Turtles now have time to relax. I'm kidding, that never happens. This marks the start of the show's first original story arc, The Big Brawl. which sees the Turtles and Splinter travel to another dimension to participate in the Battle Nexus tournament, which pits all of the greatest warriors in the universe against each other, which includes Stan Sakai's Miyamoto Usagi. Oh, hell yeah! The Battle Nexus tournament was so popular that it was adapted into the comics. So the show that was adapting the comics was now being adapted into the comics. Now that is awesome.
Season 3.
The third installment of the series kicks off with the show's first and only Christmas episode, The Christmas Aliens, which is a direct adaptation of Michelangelo's one-shot from the comics. This episode is wonderful and beautiful. I can't recommend it enough, and yes, I watch it every year.
A season of giving.
Happy holidays, everybody!
After the holiday ends, the Turtles get back to work, as Season 3 takes off at warp speed, with its first big story arc, Space Invaders, where both the Triceratons and the Federation invade Earth in search of the Fugitoid. It is during this arc that we learn that our planet has countermeasures for extraterrestrial attacks in the form of the Earth Protection Force, which leads to the introduction of the second biggest villain in the series, Agent John Bishop, played by David Zen Mansley, a xenophobic patriot whose body and mind has been genetically enhanced to superhuman levels. So not only can he match the Turtles move for move, but there is very little that could ever stop him in his crusade to rid the world of all alien and mutant threats.
Anyone moves, and you can say goodbye to Michelangelo.
After the epic alien invasion saga, we get to my favorite original story arc of the series, Across the Universe, where the Turtles are attacked by two of their rivals from the Battle Nexus tournament, the Ultimate Ninja and Draco, who use magic to banish the Turtles from the universe. But something goes wrong, and our heroes end up in different places instead. Michelangelo ends up in a parallel world where the Turtles are superheroes. Raphael lands on a distant planet where he is drafted onto a death race. Donatello is sent to an alternate future where Shredder rules the world, and the Turtles fell apart in his absence. And Leonardo ends up on Miyamoto Usagi's dimension.
Welcome to my world, Leonardo-san. Your presence is as fortuitous as it is mysterious.
It is an epic journey through time, space, and reality as our heroes fight with all their might to get home, save Splinter, and stop the villains from reshaping reality with their newfound power. And thus, Season 3 concludes with Exodus, the Turtles' last epic confrontation with the Shredder. For real this time, as the Mad Despot has built a starship and plans to use it to travel the universe and conquer every world he comes across. So the Turtles and Splinter board his ship in a desperate attempt to stop the villain from spreading his evil to other worlds. And the Turtles lose. That's right, in spite of their best efforts, Shredder was just too well prepared and defeats them, leaving our heroes broken and battered at his feet while his ship still makes its way across the stars. So our heroes have no choice but to overload the ship's power core, causing an explosion that will stop Shredder for good. But effectively, they end up sacrificing themselves. Or did they? At the last possible second, the Utroms swoop in and teleport everyone, including the villains, off the ship, right before it exploded. The Shredder is put on trial, where he is held accountable for all of his many crimes, and then vanished to a frozen asteroid where he will spend the rest of his days. And the Shredder is officially defeated. Or is he? I'm kidding. The Turtles officially shredded the Shredder.
Is it really over? No more Shredder?
Yes, my sons. My Master Yoshi's spirit can finally rest in peace.
Season 4.
While the Turtles stop the Shredder and save the universe, this initiates one of the best written storylines in the entire series, The Prodigal Son, where Leonardo feels like he failed as a leader, as our heroes' only choice to stop the Shredder was to sacrifice themselves. So Leonardo feels responsible for their loss at the hands of the Shredder, and guilty as he believes it is his fault that they all nearly die. This leads the honorable leader down a dark path, one that eventually takes him on a journey around the world to figure out how to heal his mind and spirit. But while he's out of town, Karai has literally and figuratively stepped into her father's shoes, as she has become the new Shredder, and makes her move against our heroes with extreme prejudice, attacking our heroes in their home and driving them to the streets. Thankfully, Leonardo returns just in time from his journey, finds his brothers, establishes a new base of operations at the city dam, and reminds Karai just who she's messing with.
Stay away from my family!
And thus we arrive at the final story arc of the Mirage era, Good Genes, where, out of fear that the president was going to shut down the Earth Protection Force, Bishop manufactures his own alien invasion, using genetically engineered aliens that were created by Baxter Stockman. So Bishop can swoop in, save the day, and demonstrate to the president just how useful the Earth Protection Force is. There's just one little itty-bitty little issue with this brilliant plan. The fake aliens are genetically unstable and are prone to explode under physical strain, and the sludge that they leave behind turns whatever creature consumes it into horrible monsters. You know, no big. Of course, it's up to the turtles to clean up their mess, which unfortunately leads to Donatello getting stung by one of these monsters, which destabilizes his mutation and transforms him into a terrible turtle monster, which seriously puts a damper on Casey and April's dating plans. Oh, that's right, April and Casey are dating. You might want to remember that, it's important. If anything, this story arc demonstrates what every true Blue Turtle fan has known all along, just how crucial Donatello is to the team and how lost they are without him. As our heroes are forced to strike an uneasy bargain with Bishop that effectively ends the Mirage era, but jumpstarts the Turtles' next big adventure.
Season 5, The Ninja Tribunal.
What was that? You used to watch this show when it aired originally and you don't remember a 5th season with a Ninja Tribunal? That's because this season didn't air during the show's original run, as the network decided to move forward with a reboot instead, and intended to release this season directly to DVD. It didn't officially air on television until 3 years later, where the network advertised it as the Lost Episodes. Hell, I didn't even get to see this season until 2010, when I stumbled upon it on the 4Kids website. Now, before we get too deep into this season, I have to tell you about the controversial canceled episode, Nightmares Recycled. Before I tell you about it, I would like to remind you that this is the same show in which, in the first season, Leonardo decapitated the Shredder, and throughout the first 4 seasons, Baxter Stockman was constantly being torn to pieces, and yet this episode was deemed too controversial to produce. First, I have to tell you about recurring TMNT villain, the Garbage Man. This big baddie is a giant legless mongoloid who takes everything that New York discards and uses it to his advantage. Like, he'll take garbage and turn it into weapons and vehicles, and he kidnaps the homeless and turns them into his slaves and henchmen. In the episode in question, it would have been revealed that the Garbage Man and Hun are actually brothers. But not just that, they were twins. But not just that, they were conjoined twins. While Hun was born with a perfectly healthy body, his brother was smaller, weaker, born without legs, and with the lower half of his body attached to Hun's torso. In the episode in question, once the two reached adolescence, Hun would have hired a back alley surgeon to separate them. And while his brother was still unconscious, Hun would have taken him and chucked him into the garbage. Henceforth, the reason he becomes the Garbage Man. In the present, Garbage Man would have kidnapped the Turtles, Casey, and Hun, forcing our heroes to have to team up with the Henchman to survive the Garbage Man's plans. The episode would have concluded with the Garbage Man falling into a vat of acid, and as he was sinking and begging for Hun, his brother, to save him, Han would have just looked down at him and said, "Goodbye, brother," and walked away. Suffice it to say, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles co-creator Peter Laird had a bit of an issue with this episode. According to Laird, what bothered him the most about this script was Han's lack of empathy towards his brother, and that's what most of his notes were geared towards. However, the network was not as open-minded and immediately pulled the plug, effectively canceling the episode. Yeah. Hey, how about we lighten things up by talking about mystical ninja magic? This was intended to be the final season of the series, and boy is it dramatically different from the rest of the show. For starters, the whole season is serialized. There's not a single standalone episode, as the Turtles bargain with Bishop releases a group of elemental demons who are hell-bent on bringing the original Shredder back to life. Oh, there is so much lore this season. Yes, you heard me right. There was another Shredder before the one that we know. This Oroku Saki was an ancient warrior who became mad with power and became an all-powerful Tengu called the Shredder. 1,000 years later, his acolytes are looking to revive him. So the Magical Ninja Tribunal gathers 8 worthy champions, which includes all 4 turtles, to learn how to wield mystical ninja power and battle the Tengu Shredder. So while the first 4 seasons focused on martial arts and sci-fi, this season focused on magic and mythology. And while I agree that the Turtles gaining superpowers goes against one of the key factors that makes the show special, namely their humanity and vulnerability, this season is still a lot of fun and insanely epic.
Attack!
So, do you remember how I said that the network bumped this season in favor of a reboot?
Season 6, Fast Forward.
This was not supposed to be Season 6. This was supposed to be a radical new take on the franchise with very few references to the previous show. That's why no mention is ever made of the Turtles' mystical ninja powers. And Leonardo's scar from their last confrontation with the Shredder is now magically gone. One quick, shameful confession. When I first came across this season on TV, I thought that it looked stupid and I refused to watch it. Which is a shame because it's really good. So please, don't be like me. Give things a chance. As the title may imply, the Turtles and Splinter are accidentally transported to the far future, specifically the year 2105, by the great descendant of April and Casey, Cody Jones, played by Pete Capella. That's right, April and Casey get married, and that's not all. Not only is Cody a genius, but he is also the wealthy heir of O'Neill Tech, the most successful technology firm in the world. Yes, April goes on to be the founder and CEO of her own company. See? I told you her character arc was awesome. The year 2105 is a technological marvel, where aliens and mutants happily reside on Earth among humans. So for the first time in the history of the franchise, the Turtles don't need to hide. They can walk the streets freely and have semi-normal lives. Of course, this wouldn't be a Ninja Turtle show without villains to fight, so here, the Turtles get a whole new rogues gallery, which includes the demented living computer program Viral, the insane leader of the Street Phantoms, Jammerhead, the evil turtle clones, the demonic alien conqueror Shokanabo, and Cody's scheming, greedy uncle, Darius Dunn. A second season of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fast Forward was planned but unfortunately scrapped, as slightly lower ratings and the release of the TMNT movie prompted Warner Brothers' desire for a show that resembled that movie a lot more. So Fast Forward ended after 26 episodes, and rechristened as the 6th season of the series, which is a damn shame because this version of the show was actually really good and did not deserve this.
I know how the story ends, and you guys are gonna love it.
And thus we arrive at the final season.
Season 7, Back to the Sewer.
So the show was moved to the CW, retitled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Back to the Sewer, and now we could see the irises of the Turtles' eyes. Personally, I like the white eyes. Cody suddenly fixes the time window and sends the Turtles back to their time. And due to some shenanigans with Viral, Splinter gets broken up into digital code, and his bits are lost all over the internet. So the Turtles get back to their homes safely, but now Splinter is lost on the internet. Also, Cody's snooty robot butler Serling comes with them. I have nothing against Serling, but I feel like this is a character that the cast and crew of this show liked a hell of a lot more than its audience. Again, he's not the worst, but he definitely overstayed his welcome.
How long until it's 2105?
Anyway, the recovery of Splinter's digital code is the only story arc this whole season. And how do the Turtles intend to recover their lost master's digital code? By transporting themselves inside the internet like Tron, because of course they have that kind of technology. Also, Shredder made a digital copy of himself because of course he did. So for those of you keeping score at home, we went from Utrom Shredder to Tengu Shredder to Digital Shredder. Now there are a lot of people that hate the Adventures in the Internet gimmick this season. Well, here's a fun fact for you. Originally, this season was supposed to be called Ninja Turtles Overload, and the whole thing was supposed to take place in the internet. Thankfully, Mirage, 4Kids, Warner Brothers, and Playmates couldn't agree on what they wanted the show to be. So this was the compromise that they reached, that the show would primarily take place in present-day New York as per usual, and occasionally the Turtles would enter the digital domain to have Tron-like adventures. Personally, I didn't mind the Digital World segments. They were fun, and besides, that is so far removed from my one and only complaint about the season and the whole show in general, that this season wrote a check that they never cashed. As I stated before, our heroes have a little bit of trouble getting home from the year 2105, and end up taking the scenic route through time and space. In one of the many times that they visit, they find themselves in the middle of an epic war between all three Shredders. We only get a quick glimpse of this before our heroes continue their journey, and the show never comes back to this. Ugh. Oh, and by the way, you may find some episode lists that list a 14th episode this season called Mayhem on Mutant Island as the final episode of the series. This is not the final episode. It is not canon. It is in fact a toy commercial that uses the same character designs, animation style, and voice actors from the show. I do not recommend it. Only watch it if you absolutely have to see everything involving the versions of the characters from this show. You've been warned. The actual official final episode of the series is Wedding Bells and Bites. Our heroes retrieve all of Splinter's code from the internet and save their sensei just in time for April and Casey's wedding. But the bad guys put a tracer on Splinter's code, which they use to track our heroes to the site of the nuptials. And what ensues is an epic brawl involving almost every character from the 7 seasons of the series, which of course concludes with 2 of the most beloved characters in the series tying the knot. It may not be perfect, but it was a cool curtain call for this amazing series. In my opinion, this would have been a perfectly adequate ending for this amazing series. But 3 years later, for the franchise's 25th anniversary, our heroes would return for one more adventure.
Turtles forever.
I'm going to say this as plainly as possible. I freaking love this movie. The Turtles team up with their 1987 counterparts.
Let's do this! Today, we're more than allies. We're brothers.
The #1 complaint about this movie is that they didn't use the original cast from the 1987 Ninja Turtles cartoon. The reason for this is because this movie was produced in New York and it was a non-union show, while that original cartoon was produced in LA and it was a union show. So at the time, in 2010, there was just no way to make that work. But in spite of this, I think the creators did an incredible job and delivered a great movie where we see multiple versions of our favorite heroes crossing over, teaming up, and saving the day. And not only does this movie perfectly commemorate the Turtles' 25th anniversary, but it was also a worthy end to this magnificent series.
I care nothing for the universe I left behind. I will not stop until... Less talk. More action.
Final verdict.
I've been a self-professed Ninja Turtles fan since I was 7 years old. And while I like multiple adaptations and iterations of the franchise, and I am sure there are still a lot of great ones to come, to this day, this show remains my all-time favorite adaptation of Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. 10 points on the Badassitude meter. Order some pizzas, put your shell cell on silent, and give it a watch. Until next time, I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster. Turtle Power.